We are recording. Hello, everybody, and welcome to TGI. We are a online reading series that has been taking place here on Zoom since March of this year. We are very happy to be here for this is our last show of 2020, and we are all, I think, quite happy to see the back of it. It has not been a fun year, as I'm sure everybody knows, but you know, silver linings and all, it did give birth to this, the necessity for community and connection in a world that is fractured both politically and now because of airborne pathogens. We did get a little something nice out of it. And, we've been able to make friends with people in different parts of the world. We've been able to hear all sorts of people's very, interesting work. And, we have actually tonight we have a few people who came back who I've read on the show previously or have recommended some of the people who were on the show. So it really is fun to kind of participate in the building of a social network. And I don't mean that in the social media sense where a social network is just a big web of sites that understand you and try to sell you things that they think you want. It's an actual social network in which humans treat each other like people. I know it's revolutionary, but we're trying it. All right. I'm very excited for tonight. So like I said, we will be off next week, but quick word just out the front. All the information about upcoming shows can be found on our website at TGIcast. The best place to find us otherwise is on Twitter. We found that's good for literary stuff. It's at TGIcast. I can go through all that again at the end. I think that is probably all I really have to say. This week we had a blizzard, which really tested our ability to just stay indoors. And so I'm excited to at least mentally get out of my normal space of walking around, continually forgetting to do that small household task that I mean to do. So without any further, I'm going to just say nonsense from me. Our first reader tonight is Tiff Holland. Tiff's poetry and prose appear regularly in journals and anthologies, including New World Writing, Elm Leaves Journal, New Flash Fiction, and many others. Her chapbook, Bone in a Tin Funnel, is available from Pudding House Press. Tiff is the author of the award-winning flash fiction chapbook Betty Superman from Rose Metal Press, which later was adapted the collection as a novella-in-flash and featured it in the collection My Very End of the Universe. You can see her holding it up there, which won an IPPY award. Tiff's first full-length collection of poetry, My Mother's Transvestites, was published in 2020 by Finishing Line Press. Born and raised in Northeast Ohio, Tiff has lived, worked, and studied in Georgia, Mississippi, Hawaii, and Texas. She earned a BA in philosophy from Kent State, as well as an MA in literature, and she received her PhD in creative writing from the Center for Writers at the University of Southern Mississippi. Without any more introduction, Tiff, you should be able to take it away.
Okie dokie, Flynn has his window again, and what's funny is I write flash and I write poetry. I didn't write anything except poetry until I went to graduate school, and the poets got in this fight one year, and so I asked if I could be in the fiction workshop, and Rick Barthelme was my teacher there, and he agreed to it. And I now understand he thought it would be really funny to have a poet to make fun of in the fiction workshop. So, but it didn't work out that way. I took to it really well. And the next thing I knew, he was telling people I was writing a novel. And I'd never written more than a page before I took his class. So it was really funny, but luckily most of the flashes are a page. This particular poem, it's in My Very End of the Universe, but here it appears as prose, and in the poetry collection, it appears as a poem. So it's went back and forth. I just turned him off. Okay, hot work.
I think you may.
That's still me?
You can use the dog cam. I think that might be what it is.
I turned the phone off.
He's still on there, but with oh, now it's muted. Okay, you should be good. I think.
Okay. So this is called Hot Work, and it is about the transvestites.
If you can turn down the audio on the other phone, that should stop it. I think that's what's happening.
I'll just turn the phone on.
Okay, I think it should be okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, now you're good. No echo.
Okay. I'm very bad at technology. I just call my kid in when I need something. So
that's all good.
Now I do have to find a poem again. Let's see. Okay, Hot Work. So poem, prose, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna kick back a little bit so I can actually read it. Hot Work. The transvestites like scarves, although none of the women in the shop wear them, not anymore. The transvestites are slippers in after closing. They're incognito in the back room and emerge sweaty flowers. It is hot work being beautiful, but they are willing to make concessions, to pay cash so their wives cannot track their other lives. They try on the wigs gathering dust on the top shelves, the ones the beauty shop ladies spurn. It is just them and us, although they would like nothing more than to mingle under the dryers, to nibble donuts and discuss the National Enquirer. My mother applies their makeup. I feign sleep in the shampoo chair, sneaking a peek at the finished products. Unwinged angels with 5 o'clock shadows, tottering in circles between the dryers and the styling chairs, trying in that small space to learn how to fly. So this next one is about my mother in general. And the novella is all about my relationship with my mother, which was fraught, and I consider myself gender neutral, but my mother was very, well, you'll see exactly what she's like because I'm about to read it to you. My friends called her Dragon Lady when I was in high school. What she wears, sweaters, tight over miso silo brasiers, pink, yellow, 2 pairs of support hose and open-toed shoes, even in winter. Estee Lauder perfume, frills, too much hairspray on her cotton candy hair. Makeup every minute she's awake. False teeth. She had all her real ones pulled when she was 20, all of them. They were crooked. Then she tore up all the pictures of herself, all the sweater girl pictures of herself in poodle skirts, smiling with her own teeth. Sometimes at work, she wears a smock covered in little pieces of hair. Sometimes the hair sticks to her arms and neck and face. Sometimes it takes root, grows. What she says, you look like a boy, chest out. You read too much. Just a minute, can't you see I'm on the phone? All girls who play sports are lesbians. Football players are a bunch of fanny patters. Oh, sit on my lap. You know you want to. You're mommy's little girl. Don't frown. You'll get wrinkles. You could be beautiful if you wanted to. I wish I'd never had you heathens. Your father, he's in there lying down, wishing he was dead. He wants to kill himself. Suicide. Get it? It's our fault. He hates us. Don't make me hit you. Go to the store. Here's a note. Get me 2 packs of Pall Mall, Marlboro, Merit. Give me a kiss. You'll be sorry if I die during the night. Then you'll miss your mother. What she calls my friends. Losers, lesbians, perverts. What she calls us. Heathens, knotheads, harebrains, you damn kids, crazy makers, ingrates, little. She gives us all new names. Applejack for the brother who won't stop eating. Neil Arm for the smaller, thin and pale. Milky Toast for my father. I'm Milan. She makes us have tea parties, scoop jam out of tiny jars onto overdone toast. Make small talk about our imaginary lives. What she likes, loud music. She turns on my Goodwill stereo early in the morning and dances around telling me, rise and shine, while she twists the volume up, up, up. She likes to talk on the phone, do her nails. She thinks the firemen at the station across the street are watching her, making fun of her. Candy bars. Every night, she gets up at 2 or 3 a.m. and eats a Milky Way, drinks a Coke. I listen. Once she invited me down. I wait. What she does with switches, Hot Wheel tracks, hairbrushes, shoes, once with a coffee cup. She cries every day for months, and then she stops. She reads us German folk tales. The little boy doesn't wash his hair, and small animals live in it. Another boy sucks his thumb, and the great tall tailor comes and cuts them off. She gets religion, drags us walking through mud puddles to church on Sunday mornings. She takes up crafts. We make toilet paper drums with felt and glitter for the Christmas tree. We string yarn through burlap sacks, glue macaroni to boards. We shellac at the kitchen table. She goes back to work, leaves us with him. He takes us to McDonald's for lunch, puts the phone in the freezer in case she calls. When someone calls for me, she tells her, I'm not there. She asked my first boyfriend, wouldn't she be pretty if she just gussied up? I hit her back. She asks another boyfriend if he's gay. She asks if I'm a lesbian. She walks in on me in the bathroom and accuses me of masturbating. She smokes. She gets a crush on a local politician. When Dad finally leaves, she tells me it's my fault. How she is now. She wonders why we aren't close, like we used to be. I tell her we never were, not for a minute. When I try to kill myself, she asks, how could you do this to me? She still kisses me once on each cheek and rubs the lipstick in. She denies the book of German folktales. She tells me I need to adopt a baby, be a foster mother, get rid of those stinking dogs. She tells me to put my chest out. Asks, do you still love your husband? Really? She makes me ask my brother if he's gay. He tells me he's not. A few months later, he brings his boyfriend by. She's jealous of my father. You've made him into a saint since he died, she tells me. Both of you. She has emphysema. Quit smoking. She coughs so hard she wets herself. So hard, I know she's going to die. And I feel like I'm 10 again, sitting outside her bedroom door, listening to her sleep, because she has threatened to die in the night. She pushes away the napkin I pass across the table. When she recovers, she sucks on a fake cigarette, hard. She rubs it in ash between inhalations. She points it at me across the kitchen table, and I lean back, away from her, in my chair. I've never made that exact mistake before. I'm just going to skip right to poetry. This one's called Once I Wore a Red Bikini, and I had forgotten this from my honeymoon. I was trying to be kind of girly for my husband, and so I wore the red bikini, and none of my friends believed I had ever been in one, so I wrote the poem. Once I wore a red bikini. It was our honeymoon. No one could see me, no one we knew. We spent days swimming in turquoise, napping in hammocks. I crossed my legs, my hair was curly. I was tan, you were burned. My thyroid had not yet eaten my unibrow. I leaned toward the camera. Of course, I thought I was fat, despite the neat crease in my belly button, acute angles arranged to fit inside the frame. I was happy. The stroke had not yet broken my smile. Earlier, a man in dreadlocks had paddled in on a surfboard right up to the hotel's buoyed line to sell us shells and a starfish to place on the mantle, so that after your pink skin turned tan, and years later, when I smelled burnt toast all the time and everything tasted like iron, we would remember Once I Wore a Red Bikini. And I have one more. Is that good? Okay. This is probably my favorite. Foundations. About the time I was trying to decide whether to have a sex change operation, but before I threw all my dresses and skirts, my slips and nylons in the trash, my boyfriend invited me to a fancy nightclub for New Year's Eve. The disco ball made me nervous. I have nothing to wear, I told him, although I meant, I don't know what to wear. I don't know who I am. No problem, he answered. He drove me to the mall in his red Ford Escort, took me to O'Neill's or Kaufman's or Macy's, whatever it was called back then, found a black velvet bodice with a crinoline skirt etched in gold. Part of this is missing, I told him, though it was lovely. I couldn't imagine myself in it. To me, it was lovely like a painting or a flower. I could no more imagine wearing it than dressing in petals. He took me to the foundations department. I had already told him I was neuter, had told him on our very first date. He saw a clerk restocking against the wall. We need a black, backless, strapless bra, he announced, his voice floating over the underwires, his words catching in their cups. He paused. What's your size? He asked me. I had never been in that department with someone else. I only owned athletic bras. I preferred styles that minimized and had considered wrapping my chest. 36C, I whispered. 36C, he boomed. And in a moment, the thing had appeared. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Tiff, thank you so much. That's such a I mean, first of all, I can hear the what I'm assuming has been a persistent issue for you personally, in that going to places is difficult to, especially in the past, it's been difficult to sort of explain your own identity to people and sort of navigate it easily. And it sounds like, especially if your mother was so invested in beauty and femininity in the like really classical, classical 1950s-y sense, I can only imagine. And I would just say, like, the way you write about these things with this sort of like, it's like relatively plain spoken, straight. It's not melodramatic or dramatic in any way, but very honest and vulnerable. And I think there's something about that is just this, has this effect of adding up into a real understanding of some of what your experiences have been like, which I think is wonderful. I do have to ask, has your mother ever read any of your work?
My mother loves my work. When I wrote poetry, her big thing was, quit writing poetry, write a novel about me, we'll get rich. We'll get rich. That's what she thought. I would write a novel about her and we'd get rich. And so when I wrote the first part, the novella-in-flash Betty Superman, she loved it. You know, I tried to send it to my aunts because I did a little book tour to promote it. And I went to my hometown and read at Kent State and read it in a couple bars. My aunts would not, I didn't have any place to send it. And I tried to send it to my aunts and they would not let me send it because, in one of the stories in which one of my great aunts is having a lesbian encounter, you know, I don't know who she was having it with. I just remember my mother telling me the story. So I named the character Linda, which is apparently the name of that aunt's daughter. So it would have been like incest, but I did not know that. I just I make up names, you know? So my mother loved it. My aunts, not so much.
No, I guess I hadn't thought of that angle, that you'd be like, this is great, it's about me, because to all of us, obviously, yes, it's about her, but it's about, a lot of it seems to be about the marks that she left on you, unfortunately, which is, I think, something that I saw go by in the chat. Someone commented, you know, the things that mothers will say to us that like stay with us forever, you know, that is a real power that adults have. But it sounds like you're, at least for yourself, able to sort of wade through some of this and understand it, at least, if not work on healing from it through your work.
Well, I'm not going to say I was lucky, but I spent the last 2 years with her when she was dying.
Mm.
We had been kind of estranged, and then I produced a grandchild, so I was cool again. You know, the
Right.
apex of femininity, I'd been told I couldn't. And worse yet, the girl looked like her and loved her completely, of course. She calls my daughter her legacy.
Mm.
And she used to call me up, and it was always during Jeopardy, damn it. And she would say, "Hey, you remember that ruby ring I gave you? Could you give it to Tori instead?" And it's like, Tori's going to end up with everything you gave me anyway. And then typically for my mother, it was that was her birthstone. And so it had one little diamond in it and then 7 little tiny rubies. And one of the rubies was missing. So that's like all the presents my mother ever gave me. There's some little part missing. And then she asked me to give it to someone else. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Well, there's
Yeah.
obviously much more of a story there. So people,
30 years of therapy. That's all I'm going to say. 30 years of therapy.
yeah, that's, well, at least you're doing well. And honestly, these are the experiences that I love that people write about, because these are the things that for years no one would speak of. And everyone knew somebody, everyone had a family member, everyone had a difficult relationship, everybody had all these things. And everyone just used to pretend everything was fine. And as long as you had, a car in the driveway and a roast in the oven, everybody's good. And it turns out that's not really exactly true. So I think it's great that you're speaking
Yeah, I
about.
even have a brother who is really my uncle.
Hmm.
I call him my brunkle if you buy the book. It's like, oh, there's a brunkle. What the hell's a brunkle? Well, if you have an uncle and he's raised as your brother, that's your brunkle. So
Right. Well,
just when you think it can't get crazier with me, then it does.
well, Noli put a link to your website in there. I believe we
Great, thank you.
So everybody, if you want to go find out more, please do. Tiff, thanks so much. That was wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. All right.
Yay, Tiff!
Our next reader tonight is Donna Miscolta. Donna's third book of fiction, Living Color Angie Rubio Stories, about lessons a young Mexican-American girl learns in a world that favors neither her race nor gender, was published by Jaded Ibis Press in September 2020. Her story collection, Hola and Goodbye, winner of the Doris Backwin Award for Writing by a Woman and published by Carolina Wren Press 2016, won an Independent Publishers Award for Best Regional Fiction and an International Latino Book Award for Best Latino-Focused Fiction. She's also the author of the novel When the De La Cruz Family Danced from Signal 8 Press 2011, and her recent essays have appeared in PIF, Los Angeles Review, and the anthology Alone Together, Love, Grief, and Comfort in the Time of COVID-19. Very topical. So, Donna, you should be good to go. You can take it away.
Oh, thank you, Ridge, and thank you, Trina and Noli, for all the work you do putting this series together. And Tiff, I loved your pieces. Thank you for sharing those. So I'm going to read, so as Ridge said, this is a collection of stories about a particular character. Each story is about Angie Rubio, and each story is about a particular grade in school and a lesson that she learns in school, not necessarily in the classroom. Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. And so the one I'm going to read from the story when she is in the 5th grade. Mrs. O'Farrell called on Perry Wheeler first during current events time. Perry talked about Hurricane Flora. He described the intertropical convergence zone and held up a diagram he'd made that explained how a hurricane forms. He'd sketched a large map that showed all the affected countries in the Caribbean, plus the tip of Florida. Over 7,000 people were killed by the hurricane. Luckily, only one of them in Florida. Perry then pointed out the custom of naming storms after girls because of their stormy natures. This last point, offered as just another fact, elicited a smug hilarity from the boys. There were some snorts of annoyance from the girls, but no outright refutation from anyone. Angie wondered if anyone else seethed silently with rage. Mrs. O'Farrell thanked Perry for bringing in a current event that gave them scientific, geographic, and historical information. Now, Angie, what have you got for us? Angie wished she had thought to draw a map for her current event. Since she had no visual aids, she jumped right in with a lead-in she'd practiced at home. My article is about Sam Cooke, the singer and songwriter of hits like Twisting the Night Away. He and his band, but Mrs. O'Farrell stopped her. Angie, I'm sorry if the rules weren't explained to you, but we don't bring in news about celebrities. News about movie stars, singers, and athletes is not important to what we're learning in class. But he got arrested, Angie said. Angie, you'll get another chance for current events soon. Angie shrank at the snickering of classmates, cringed at the embarrassed looks on her behalf. She tucked the newspaper clipping inside her notebook and pressed it closed on the article that told about Sam Cooke and his band being arrested for trying to check in at a whites-only motel in Shreveport, Louisiana. She hoped she would see Max Salgado at recess. If he happened to speak to her, even if it was only about Foursquare, she would tell him about Sam Cooke. Maybe her eyes would well with indignation. Maybe Max would offer a sleeve. But at recess, Judy Wycamp shouted for all the girls in Mrs. O'Farrell's class to gather around her. Though Angie fit the category, she was still uncertain whether Judy meant to include her. Judy handed round little white envelopes, but not to everyone. A few of the invitations had two names on them. Judy explained to the throng of girls around her that the person whose name came first was the primary invitee, and the person whose name came second was invited because she was friends with the primary invitee. It would have been rude to exclude you, Judy told the second named, who, in keeping with her status, formed a second ring of girls around Judy. Angie stepped closer to Sylvia, who turned and smiled at her from the inner circle. Here, she said, handing Angie the envelope. You can hold it until recess is over. Her mother was skeptical when Angie announced she was invited to a slumber party, and when Angie could not produce an invitation as proof, her mother dismissed the matter altogether. But I am invited, Angie wailed. Aren't I, Eva? Angie had already explained to her the circumstances of the shared invitation. Eva looked up from her homework. It's true. Angie's invited, she said, making quotation marks with her fingers. Then she elaborated. Only the popular girls got an invitation to take home, like Sylvia Rico. Popularity isn't everything, their mother said. She looked at Angie and then in the direction of the Rico house next door. Well, if Sylvia's going. She left the room, her resignation trailing behind her. Angie knew her mother wanted her to be more like Sylvia. In fact, Angie was sure her mother wanted her to be Sylvia, who was never awkward, but shy in the way that charmed rather than aggravated people. She turned to Eva and repeated their mother's words, maybe for assurance, more likely for consolation. Popularity isn't everything. Eva scoffed. That's what unpopular people say. And we, she said, are not a popular family. Fact of life. Eva said fact of life a lot, ever since she got her period. It was an irksome phrase, and Angie often hid the box of Kotex to get back at her. Junior high had hardened Eva. It was in PE class that the mortifications of adolescence were first laid bare to her. She had disclosed to Angie the horrors of changing her clothes side by side with other girls, of the gym monitors imposing demerits for showering without soaping, and the cruelly democratic policy of one girl, one towel. But what sent Eva to the precipice of despair and reckless sarcasm was one word in 8th grade science: genetics. It wasn't as if she'd never heard the word before. It was just that only now had she really understood its implications. It determines our lives, she said. Hair color, eye color, skin color, bra size, popularity. Eva paused for breath and effect. Fact of life. We're doomed. That was Eva. But Eva had never been to a slumber party. Andrew decided that this was where Eva's path and her own would differ. In Judy Wycamp's rumpus room, they ate frozen pizza, potato chips with onion dip from a plastic tub, and snickerdoodles. They burped indecently from root beer. They did each other's hair with dippity-doo and sprayed Aquanet until they were faint with fumes. They danced to the Dave Clark Five and lip-synced to Jerry and the Pacemakers. They spoke to each other in English accents as they passed around the latest issue of Tiger Beat. Angie was always one step behind, miming the last note to Ferry Across the Mersey when everyone else had begun to squeal over the pinup of Bobby Sherman. Then someone put Sam Cooke's Another Saturday Night on the record player, and Angie's ears burned at the recollection of her current events failure. When the other girls sang at the top of their lungs, Angie only joined in at the end of the chorus, the part about ain't got nobody and being in an awful way. Then they sat in a circle in their sleeping bags and told scary stories, and then gossiped about their classmates. One girl, who apparently had forgotten that Angie was present at the party, exclaimed, "Did you see what Angie Rubio was wearing to school the other day?" For a minute, Angie wondered if there could possibly be another Angie Rubio, but no, there was only her. As she tried to recall what unforgivable thing she might have been wearing, Judy addressed her directly. "Angie," she said, as if she just discovered her presence, "too bad about your current event." "Yeah, too bad," Sylvia said more gently. "At least now you know the rules," Judy said, in her PTA president's daughter voice. While Angie, the part-time cafeteria worker's daughter, was trying to decide just how grateful she should be for Judy's assurance, the conversation turned to fashion and Jackie Kennedy's elegance. And Angie, eager to contribute to the discussion, announced, "My mother framed the Life magazine photos of Jackie and JFK." But the topic had changed yet again, to boys. Judy first had everyone swear that anything said in that room, her rumpus room that night, would remain a secret. Then she revealed that she had a semi-crush on Max Delgado. Everyone gasped and gushed an opinion, that he looked like a sixth grader, that his voice was already starting to change, that he hardly ever spoke to girls. This time, Angie knew better than to volunteer that Max had spoken to her. "Of course, I would never kiss him," Judy said. No one questioned his policy, as there seemed to be a universal understanding of its logic, though it completely escaped Angie. "I just need to walk on the wild side for a bit," Judy said, and the other girls nodded their agreement. The conversation seemed to inspire the next slumber party activity, strip poker. But after the cards were dealt, they discovered that none of them knew how to play poker. So Judy ordered everyone to write down her name on a piece of paper. When pen and paper were passed to Angie, she hesitated, wondering what kind of disease she could claim that would exempt her from the game. "What's the matter?" Judy asked. "Something wrong with you?" "No," Angie replied quickly, wondering why she seemed to regularly invite such a question. The pen was slippery in Angie's hand, and her penmanship, normally sure and neat, wiggled out of the lines, and it worried her to see her name so slouchy and untidy. She folded the paper tightly, her fingers still greasy from chips and cookies, leaving stains along the crease. Judy collected the folded slips of paper in her cupped hands and then dropped them into the empty potato chip bowl. The game was simple. Judy would draw a name, and that girl would have to lose an item of clothing. There was nervous giggling all around, except from Angie, who feared any sound of protest that might escape from her constricted windpipe. Angie was grateful for one thing. Earlier, when they had all changed into their night clothes, modestly taking turns behind a screen, Angie was made acutely aware that she was the only one not wearing a frilly nightgown. For once, she was happy for her departure from the norm. At least her pajama top and bottom gave her a 2-to-1 edge in pieces of clothing. Judy swirled the names with her hand, making a show of it, raking the contents with her fingers, scooping a handful of names, letting them drift back down into the bowl, and increasing the drama of it all by humming the death march. At one point, Judy stopped swirling the names and raised her hand to tuck a strand of aquanet stiffened hair behind her ear. And Angie caught a glimpse of a slip of paper stuck to the corner of her palm, saw it slide down the folds of Judy's rayon nightgown into the curly clumps of the shag carpet. From where she sat, even nearsighted Angie could see the telltale smudge that marked her name. Someone surely saw it. Angie looked around her. Some of the girls had their eyes closed and their fingers crossed, but even those whose eyes were open seemed not to have noticed a stray slip of paper. Surely she should say something. But then Judy leaned forward and bared the paper under her knee as she drew the first name, and Angie felt a giddy relief at the knowledge that it wasn't hers. She soon felt justified in her deceit. As numbers were drawn and clothing was gradually discarded, Angie was horrified to learn that under their nightgowns, everyone was wearing a bra, even Sylvia. Before long, a pile of nightgowns and a tangle of pink applique training bras filled the middle of their circle, and the girls had wrapped themselves in blankets or burrowed like naked moles into their sleeping bags, all while something was happening or not happening. Angie alone, though braless, remained fully clothed, sitting atop her sleeping bag, a creeping conspicuousness overtaking her. Why isn't Angie's name coming up? Someone asked from the depths of a quilt pulled to her chin. Judy, suddenly suspicious, reached for the potato chip bowl and emptied the names onto the floor. Clutching a sheet around herself with one hand, she picked through each name with the other, taking roll call, each girl huffing a righteous here. When Judy had called all the names from the bowl, only Angie had not responded. There was silence and accusing stares, and Judy's eyes narrowed as she searched for an explanation. Angie's eyes went to the floor, searching for her name, but it had become lost amid all the strewn clothes, which Judy was now flinging about with her one free arm. Aha, she shouted, holding up the plastic dish of onion dip as if it were evidence in a crime. A little slip of paper, Angie's slip of paper, clung to the side of the dip. You were never even in the game, Judy said. The other girls in their covered up nakedness glared at Angie, who, without having shed a single piece of clothing, felt completely exposed. Later, when the lights were out and the last whispering and giggling around her had died and been replaced by soft breathing and snores, Angie remembered Eva's voice of doom, Judy humming the death march, Sam Cooke singing, I ain't got nobody.
Wow, Donna, thank you so much. So many relatable, I guess things, obviously not the literal conditions for myself, but the relatable sort of that constant process of like negotiating these new social structures when you're that age, and the constant like fear that you will be othered in some way, like that you will be revealed to not be just like everybody else, and that they'll turn to you and notice you. And I just love the sort of inversion of, by being the only one who sort of isn't humiliated, she is humiliated so much more than they are. It's really evocative of just the that was my social experience as a tween, I guess is what you'd call it now, and that's without the maybe difference in ethnicity or anything. So and development. um so you said each one of the stories takes place, is it just the grades that she goes through, or is it at a different time in her life?
Right. Each story is a different grade, and so it's a different experience that she has, and pretty much the same kind of theme, trying to find a place, trying to figure out where she belongs, bumping up against these barriers and trying to figure out how to get past them.
Yeah, and that's sort of the most difficult part of childhood to some extent, is that these barriers and these lines and rules and everything seem so absolute and like inescapable that it sort of like, yeah, she commits in the one you just read, she sort of, by not mentioning the fact that she's not playing the game, she sort of commits the ultimate sin there. It is to just opt out. Whereas at some point in your life, in adulthood, you realize that if someone's being unpleasant and mean, you could just leave.
Right. And those are the things in our childhood and adolescence that we don't quite, we don't quite know what to do in a situation where we find ourselves. And it's only later that we think, oh, I should have done that. But in the moment, it's like, what do I do? So.
Your reality and options are so limited by what you know. So, well, that's wonderful, and I think that must be such an interesting thing to explore, sort of the different developmental and social, um, both milestones and difficulties that someone goes through. So I think, and you put it so beautifully in the description of it, in her being a young Mexican American girl in a world that favors neither her race nor gender, is I think a really sort of like spot on way to put it too. So That's wonderful. Thank you for coming and sharing. And there's a link to your website in the chat. And I think people can pick up the book, find you on Twitter, all that stuff. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right. That was also, I got to say, like a story where I was definitely like, what's going to happen? What are they going to do to her when they find out? So it's really fun to have something that's sort of that thrilling in a way. It's not, I don't know, it's tense. Anyway.
Thanks.
All right. Our next reader is Alina Stefanescu. She was born in Romania and lives in Birmingham, Alabama with her partner and several intense mammals. That's an amazing phrase. Her writing can be found in diverse journals, including Prairie Schooner, North American Review, Flock, Southern Humanities Review, Crab Creek Review, Virga, Whale Road Review, and others. She serves as the poetry editor for Pigeonholes, poetry editor for Random Sample Review, poetry reviewer for Up the Staircase Quarterly, and co-director of PEN America's Birmingham chapter. A finalist for the 2019 Kurt Brown AWP Prize, Alina also won the 2019 River Heron Poetry Prize. She would like you all to know she still can't believe or deserve any of this. So now I can hand things over to the very humble Alina. You should be able to unmute yourself and take us away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's wonderful to hear other people reading and wonderful to be a part of it. I think I'm going to do some poems, although I have a little chapbook out from Bull City Press, which is creative nonfiction, and it's called Ribald, and I'll share it at the end, I guess, but it's really fun, and I hope that you get a copy. It's a great stocking stuffer. So the first poem, I'm going to read some poems that are, in the interest of time, I'm going to stick to poems that are in the I voice, because it's been a week of the I non-existing with 3 kids at home, and one of them is a teenager, and his I is very big right now. It is so large, and I love it. I love it. You know, but it's also, I'm gonna do some I poems. So I'm gonna start with a poem that is called Apologia, and I hope that this has a content warning for abortion for anyone who is, who needs that. Apologia. At 22, I disappeared for a minute. I did not respond when you called me. I wanted the death Alabama didn't offer. I did not want the local D&C option. I refused the twilight sedation, the succor of a specialist doing the deed for me. I have no excuse for what I needed to be guilty. After visiting a former lover in Manhattan, I went to Liberty Clinic and swallowed the first pill. Its origins French, as the famous green statue. I used Mountain Dew to swallow the final pill on the train for Coney Island. I say Coney when I mean destination, the termination of pregnancy, the train ending in a carnival apart. The gulls witnessed everything. I stood on the boardwalk, marveling, dumbstruck by dizziness as something left this body, its warmth flooding my jeans. My hands shook like toy airplanes. No doula or doctor or nurse intervened. No expert stood between my breath and the sky, my breath and the clouds clotting, my breath and the unwanted baby, my life and the blood on my hands, the certain solace, a choice I made with myself. I did it all. I did everything. I wore the silver mermaid necklace for years, a souvenir. So I know that one's a little bit intense. So I'm gonna go a little bit lighter now. And this one was just These two are together, and one of them was just published in Ford's Review. It's called Thought Piece and Think Piece. So they sort of take an anaphora and they repeat it and go through it. So this is Thought Piece. I thought 5 feet of snow in Alabama brought me closer to Emily Dickinson's white space. I thought saying the Pledge of Allegiance was the absolutist promised. I thought putting my hand on my heart while saying the pledge was like having scared sex in public. I thought not saying the pledge would protect me from lying or losing my clothes. I thought lying was touching the color of feathers too quickly with one's tongue and not being sorry. I thought the woods behind our house were haunted by green horses. I thought horses were jealous of ponies because ponies get to carry toddlers and apples. I thought eating an apple under the dogwood was the closest an afternoon crawled to heaven, and heaven itself was never finished by the words we used to brick it. I thought being haunted was better than being popular since my classmates couldn't see the future. I thought school was punishment for hearing trees talk before rainstorms. I thought going for alone walks wove a friendship bracelet between myself and the land if I did it in complete circles and stepped out a small X at the end. I thought the sad kids in books were my friends. Think piece. I think the poet's mercy is boundless and dread is an empty matchbook and fire has never been easier to make. I think gas station restrooms are vectors for rambling germs and bacteria. So family road trips involve stopping to piss in meadows and ditches where we add the GPS coordinates of each chosen rest stop to our places we have peed Google Map. I think my fear translates as a form of fearlessness. I think my children believed in fairies longer than usual because I believed in fairies with them. I think violence is embarrassing and PDA is a living art that competes with local statues for exuberance. I think every act of kindness deserves to be amplified by a solid case study. I think studying is the cheapest salvation. I think salvation is neither salve nor ending. I think the speed of light is still impossible to fathom as my son explains the math among a symphony of fiddlehead ferns. I think warblers have stopped singing to admire my son's words. I think doomsday folk usually wear their hair very buzz cut or business as if the industry of world ending demands militant attention to personal hygiene. I think no one knows why God knows when a bullet misses its target. I think plans misfire, but God's will outlasts its independence. I think baked potatoes soaked in mayonnaise will always be delicious. I think the sad kids in books are my friends. And I don't know if I have time for one more. Do I have time for one more? I do? Okay. Then I'm going to do this random thing that I just, because it's fun sometimes to read something that is totally unfinished and is the bones of something. And because this is tentatively called Little Ditty, like Jack and Diane, that song, which has been playing in the house. And it's for my partner, the one who's doing dinner and all that other stuff, and the kids tonight, as he does often. It should be harder to say I love you, like I mean it, being thicker than the heart sap of bluegrass banjos, or the boat of bare feet finding rhythm on hardwood. Yes, I love you, like overdone midriffs at the fairground with your bass and your Bruce and your biovac energy, like the feel of fresh grass when I'm kneeling to pick, and I love you from the ditch where I love you belongs, in the shit of some anonymous mammal, in a landscape you must love the manure, like I love you, like I love like you love the acoustics of kissing, the decibels of groping, the street lamps of almost hitting it in the back seat. I love you in the front yard. I love you in the cars we've used to keep from waking the children. I love you like everything woke anyway. It is waking. I mean, it being morning, it being dimming, it being harder to say, I love you when I love you. Like this, is this it? Anyway, that's a strange little poem. And thank you all so much.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Alina. Those were wonderful. Really powerful, I think, in your word choice and your, I say this all the time because I'm not a literary educated person. Poetry has this really unique way of getting inside me and changing the way I think about things, and sort of, it's like almost like a combination that somehow snaps something over. And I think just to address like the first one, we had someone else actually a while back. We had a young lady who read some work on ending a pregnancy, and at the time I said, this is something that my understanding at least is almost, I think it's about a quarter of women in America have some experience with, and literally nobody talks about it. So once again, kind of similar to Tiff's work, these are the things that I think, we've had generations of people in pain because they don't hear someone talk about it, because they don't get to speak about it themselves. So, and similar, not similar, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess this image of, taking the time to really understand and accept that that is something that happened and that it is not necessarily good, but it may have been necessary at the time, is a really important process. And having that modeled for people, I think, is also important. And communicating that and not just sort of sweeping it under the rug, never to speak of it again, never to turn back to it. So I first just wanted to say I really appreciated that. And I think, I understand that we do live in an era of trigger warnings and content warnings and things like that, but I almost, within reason, for myself, I think sometimes those are the things where I need to listen the hardest. Within reason, there are things that will make me get up and leave a room. Don't get me wrong. That just doesn't happen to be one for me. But anyway, wanted to say first, I just appreciated that, and then that just, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were introducing all the poems, when you said that after the time you've been having lately, reading some things about I is a nice thing to do. I thought the thought piece, think piece was so wonderfully paralleled, and also just, it made me realize that I so rarely would be able to sit down and list, say, 15 or 20 sentences that start with I think. That's just not something I do. I don't think that's something many people do. So I think there you go. That was wonderful. And, so many of those observations were just spot on. And then as for the last one, I mean, the sort of vibrance and passion and, the idea, just really the idea that the statement of love or the profession of love should not be so easy for people is just wonderful. So I really, really enjoyed it and just got a ton out of your work. So you have several things available, it looks like. I think Noli just put a link in the chat there. And there's also your website if people want to find more of your work. And then you're also doing these editing and review stuff as well. So I personally am really thankful to finally meet you, because I think I told you before the show that I feel like I saw your name appear on our Twitter. Like it was like, maybe it was when you agreed to do the show, but I feel like it was months ago.
Maybe it was. It's really nice to be reading that. And I think the first poem that I read is sort of important to me because one of the reasons my parents defected from Romania was because, as a physician, my mom was required to basically enforce the state law of not privately checking women in their workplaces to see if they were pregnant with every 2 or 3 months, vaginal checks. and then monitoring that. And if a woman lost the baby, she was guilty of abortion because abortion was a crime against the state. So I grew up in a family where no matter what the religious view was, there was never a view that what was inside a woman belonged to the state, and that the state had a property right over the female body. And, you know, I think being a mother, ironically, made that more important than anything. And I wasn't able to do any readings for those books or those poems at the libraries here because they're publicly funded. And in Alabama, something that's publicly funded does not allow you to talk about abortion.
Wow.
And these are all liberal librarians who have no choice. So that is still the world we live in. And we prefer to not think about those things. We prefer to think those women or those experiences are somehow peripheral, but there's all kinds of women, some of whom end up having children that they love, some of whom already have kids, some of whom never have kids and don't want them, you know, that make these decisions. And yeah, I think it's important, I don't know, it's an important topic for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're exactly right. And I think, you know, and the fact that it varies so much state to state sort of adds such a different level to the conversation about it in America, because, you know, we live in New York City, but we have friends who live in all kinds of different places, and
Right.
really, you know, these giant, I say giant in the sense of these unchangeable beliefs that some people have about what is and isn't appropriate really
They're
restrict.
very new too, though. I think a lot of it is very much, you know, the culture wars that started in the 1960s. I mean, I think the religious right in this country has really amplified all of those topics and has made them, turn them into something that they just never were in all of human time. You know, I don't think abortion has ever been as big a deal as it is right now in the US. You know, I think
Sure.
it's just, so yeah, but
There's a much larger conversation to have about what happened with the inclusion of born again Christianity and politics that only talks about people's genitalia.
oh yeah.
That's something we could definitely get into. We can sidebar that till after the show, because I do want to hear more. But everybody, you know, for now at least, I would like to extend on behalf of us and our audience just appreciation for you to come and speak about it. I think that's so amazing. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Our final reader this evening, we started a little bit late. We're ending a little late. It's okay. I very selfishly chose to use the restroom before the show started, and that has caused us to run late. Our final reader tonight is Francine Witt. She is a poet, a playwright, and a flash fiction writer. Her stories and poems have appeared in Smoke Long Quarterly, Wig Leaf, Passages North, Mid-American Review, and many others. Her flash fiction collection, Dressed All Wrong for This, was the 2019 winner of the Blue Light Press Award. Her novella, The Way of the Wind, received a highly commendable mention in the Bath Flash Fiction Award for 2019 and was published by Ad Hoc Fiction. Her latest poetry collection, The Theory of Flesh, was published last year by Kelsey Books. Her flash fiction chapbook, The Cake, the Smoke, the Moon, is due out in September 2021. She is a former high school English teacher, and she lives in New York City. Francine, you should be good to go.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So thank you, Noli, Trina, and Rach for having me, and thanks everybody for being here. It's very nice. So I'm gonna read a couple, well, I'm not sure what this first one is, but then I have some flash fiction and a piece at the end. I'm the last man standing from my original family, you know. So I was thinking about them, and sometimes I think how fortunate they have been to have missed these past few years. It's kind of a dark thought, but it does creep in sometimes that they didn't know. So this is to my relatives who died before COVID. My father, who loved the distance, loved being far from things, from us. My other city sister who slumped sudden over a flip phone and wouldn't be able to mute. My mother, always lipstick, always powder, The mask would not have stopped her because she'd say, people know. My grandmother, flew of 18, who knitted and baked and ended up vision loss and hearing loss, and that was her shelter in place. My free spirit aunt, who wouldn't have stayed home no how, and rather she'd slip out to one of those bars with takeout only, her in the alley with her son's best friend, the two of them not hearing my uncle's muffled footsteps. All of them not believing, we can't see it, this couldn't happen. And yet, I remember the time we all stood on the beach and looked at the horizon. We thought it swallowed everything. Look, one of us even said, a whole boat hidden behind my thumb. This is this is a flash fiction. It's called My Mama Wanted a Zebra, but all she got was a stupid cow. So there she stands in the backyard, paintbrush in hand. Gotta make the best of things, she is muttering. She stripes white paint on the side of the cow, the sirloin side, the part of the cow I have eaten hamburgers from. The cow turns its still cow head to her as if to say, paint me all you want, I'm still gonna moo and give milk. Mama hears this cow thought loud and clear. She puts down the paintbrush and walks around to face the cow head on. Look, she says out loud to the cow, I could tell you stories of how pretty I was born. You can't see it anymore. And then she says, there was music in my fingers. That also got leaked out. Mama gives up and goes back to painting. You gotta give some things time, she is muttering. She decides if all else fails, she will have to take off her dress and show the cow the stripes that are painted on her own side. So I should say one of the big steps in my flash fiction journey was how I met Noli. She chose my manuscript for this chapbook, which she designed this. So this is all her. I've always gotten lots of compliments on it. So this is my chapbook, Cold June. And I think I have the last 10 copies of it because, it's out of print now. So I'll read the and that was really just one of the biggest thrills of my life, winning that contest and having the chapbook published. This is the title poem, the title story. I knew I'd get it right. It's called Cold June. The coldest on record. Here in Maine, temps of teens and 20s becoming the norm. Mavis Farnsworth in a pine green sweater makes her look like Christmas, her husband Tom says. I'd sure like to unwrap you, he adds with a twinkle. She bakes him sugar cookies instead. He turns on the little TV, all black and white and rabbit ears. These days, the news is always the same. Words like freakish and ice age and end of the world. The anchorman puts on earmuffs as a joke, but the weatherman says it's not funny. The weatherman talks about a cooling sun and predictions of ocean waves freezing mid-curl. Cuts to Florida where the local station shows icy palm trees with shivery fronds. Then a citrus farmer, puffy cloud breath, screwdrivers open and orange. The fruit inside like broken glass. My wife just bought a winter coat, he says. Watching this, Mavis just sighs. She has lived in winter coats all her life. Tom snaps off the TV and comes up behind her. He slips the pine tree sweater off of Mabel's birdie shoulder. Forget all that, he says. Nothing but fear and commercials. He walks her towards their patch quilt bed. Mavis looks at the timer. 20 minutes till the cookies are done. She likes to interrupt her day. She doesn't like to interrupt her day, but figures Tom needs something to do. He dims the light to a dark charcoal. Outside the window, ice beginning to lace the trees, the sun going cold as a stone. And, you know, I put that story, I don't think I did it in Call June, but I did put this story in my flash fiction full length. And I realized it when I was reading the story. Sometimes she's Mavis and sometimes she's Mabel. And you know, you can point of that being you could proofread your manuscript 500 times and still not catch that. And so I think it went to print that way. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to read is a little bit longer, and I think it's a poem. But anyway, it's called Answers. Because you're just a baby, because I said so, because I'm your mother, because I have to go to work now, because when I come home, I'll be too tired, because that's how it's always going to be, because I'm your father, because you're a big girl, because your mother said you should listen to me, because I'm the babysitter, because I thought you wanted a baby sister, because you have to share me now, because your sister needs me more than you do. Because in kindergarten, we learn to share with others, because the other children need me too, because I'm the teacher. Because I have to work so we can have money, because I'm your father, and that's what fathers do. Because I love you, because I love you, because I love you. Because your father was busy, because he's got a lot on his mind, because he forgets my birthday too. Because your sister's so cute, because your sister's just a baby, because I'm supposed to watch the baby, because I'm the babysitter, right? Because your father and I were having problems, because you'll understand when you're older, because I don't understand either. Because sometimes grown-ups fall out of love, because sometimes people fall in love with other people, because I fell in love with someone else, because sometimes even fathers can be jerks. Because you have to go to school, because everybody goes to school, because I have to go to work now, because your father left us high and dry. Because you didn't hand in your report, because you don't pay attention, because you really seem like a nice girl, because I don't enjoy failing students. Because you can't go out, because you have to watch your sister, because you're too old for a babysitter, because I can't afford a babysitter. Because you know I call you when I can, kiddo, because I'm still your dad, because you're busy with the new baby, because you understand. Because your sister helps out more, because I'm hurt that you'd say that, because I love both my girls the same. Because I don't want to go steady, because I thought I wanted to go steady, because I want to go steady with someone else. Because boys only want one thing, because I know, all right, because that's how I got pregnant with you. Because I had to fail you, because you have so much potential, because I thought you'd be more like your sister. Because I'm your mother and I can still punish you, because I smelled liquor on your breath, because I smelled smoke on your breath, because I smelled a boy's breath on your breath. Because I met someone else, because I didn't know how to tell you, because I didn't know she was your sister. Because she didn't do it on purpose, because your sister wouldn't hurt you, because she's your sister. Because you didn't have enough credits to graduate, because night school will be better for you, because not everyone's a top student, right? Because you have to graduate high school, because both my girls are going to graduate high school, because you don't want to end up like me. Because I lost your number, because I like you as a friend, because I only like you as a friend, because I don't love you, because I thought I love you, because I love you too much, because you don't know what love is, because I don't know what love is, because I think I might be gay, because I think you might be gay, because I don't want to hurt you, because I don't want to get hurt, because I wanted more, because I wanted less, because I'm a fucking jerk. Because you were late 3 times, because you were always distracted, because we need someone more perky, because we really do like you, because we're doing you a favor, because we can't give you another chance, because we already gave you another chance, because we already hired someone else. because your sister has children and you don't, because your sister is married, because your sister calls me more often, because your sister needs me more than you do. Because we didn't want to scare you, because we're only doctors and we don't know everything, because if you came in sooner, we could have caught it, because we don't really know that much about it, because we really don't know that much at all. Because we need to know what you want to do, because you don't want to end up a vegetable, because the truth is, I'm not so healthy myself, because your sister needs me too, because the truth is, you really can't count on me. Because we didn't realize how bad it was, because you never said anything, because you should have spoken up, because we can't read your mind, because you should have told us. Because the doctors did everything they could, because only the good die young, because God needs you in heaven, because at least you're not suffering anymore. Because I didn't tell a lot of people, because I didn't think you'd want a big fuss, because people don't like to go to funerals, because people are uncomfortable at funerals, because people are busy, because you always took everything so personally, because you were always so sensitive. Because I could have been a better mother, because I didn't know how to be a mother, because who the hell knows how to be a mother? Because. Thank you.
Ooh, Francine, thank you. That last, wow. The repetition, and also just the way that repetition and the fact that it's people's responses to questions, criticism, whatever it is, it really outlines all these life experiences that are so difficult, and these just frustrating and very human, but also very silly things people say to try to justify all of these things. Really effective, I think. It just hit all kinds of things. I think this is interesting. Themes generally emerge when we do this show, and it's not intentional at all. It's just people's work. Sometimes these sort of tendencies in a given night pile up, and tonight a lot of it has been about how people communicate with each other, and sometimes are not as kind as they should be, or not as thoughtful, or whatever it is. And also just the real experiences of life, and the fact that people frequently either don't know what to say, choose not to say anything, or say something that's utterly hollow, like about it. I really that one was a lot. It was very good though. Really, it elicited a lot of feelings in me. And then the only other thing I really wanted to comment on is, I think a lot of people, again, back to things that we haven't been, thinking of, I myself, my mother passed away in 2014. And I think pretty frequently, like, I'm kind of glad that before the president, before COVID,
Mm-hmm. Right.
just kind of the amount of fear that's in the world right now, the fact that some of our loved ones who are gone have been spared from that degree of fear is
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for, yeah.
Like, it's a dark thought, but it's real. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure people had the same thought about family members who passed away before, not to necessarily, it's different, but people who passed away, before 9/11 or something, where you're sort of like, well, they didn't have to deal with this degree of fear and difficulty in their everyday lives. So I think it's totally understandable, and just I found your work very relatable, and I love these just little sort of the way you use dialogue to tell us so much about not only what the person's saying, but it's who that person is, why they're saying it, where they are, all these things. Just these little one lines can really be so revealing. So you have several books available, both flash fiction and poetry.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the I sort of I do. They're all on Amazon, by the way. So
Right.
but so there's Dressed All Wrong for This is the flash fiction. And This is my Theory of Flesh, which is poetry, and Cafe Crazy, which I didn't really read anything from. That was the first one. And this one, I'm really excited about this one. This is my novella-in-flash, and it's on Kindle. So it's like, I love Kindle. I love just, like putting like, $10 in there and like, oh, I have a book. So I'm so instant gratification. It's like pathetic. But now it's on Kindle, and it's like $6 on Kindle. So that's also on Amazon, but I'll put the links on it. But
We'll only just put links to some of your books in the chat. If you have others, you're welcome to share them.
oh, great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Francine. I'm just going to wrap things up, and then I would like to just tell everyone to remind them to stick around because we're going to have a little trivia game. Nothing, I don't think you need to have watched the show before to know the trivia. And the way we do trivia when we do it is we do it on Kahoot, and then the top 3 people who score the highest get a book. They can pick a book in the mail from someone that we have had on the show, which now is a pretty big list because it's 4 or 5 people every week since March. So there should be something you can find on there if you're interested. For now, I will say thank you to the readers and the audience so much for being here tonight. I really appreciated everyone sharing their work, and we always love to have sort of that lively discussion in the chat of people, reacting. If you want to find out more about the show, the best place to go is tgicast.com. There you can find upcoming events, the bios of people who are going to read on the show, and also a archive of videos of past shows. And sorry, thought I could get through that without clearing my throat. Not happening. It's winter. If you want to catch up with the show in more real time, you can find us on Twitter at TGICast. If you want to see what the curly-haired spiritual foundation of the show, creator Trina Thibodeau, is up to, you can find her on Twitter at Trina Tibbs, TreeanaThibs. If you'd like to find myself on Twitter, you can do it at my name, Ridge Cresswell, 2 S's, 2 L's. And if you want to recommend somebody to the show or have any questions about the booking operations, you can go and talk to our scheduling guru, talent relations whiz, Noli Reed, who is on Twitter at Noli Reed, and also can be reached by email. We do love people to recommend friends to the show. I think that's how a lot of people have gotten on here. So please, if there's someone you'd like to hear, send them along. We are always looking for more people. We have quite a few scheduled at this point, so we might be talking April or May or something, but we're going to keep doing this until, I don't know, until the wheels fall off. We don't really have an agenda here. I think, the only big thing is that people have always been saying, if there's a vaccine, if things go back to normal, I don't see any reason to cease doing this. We'll just change. It might look different. So stick with us. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thanks to everyone who was here for the first time. Thanks to everyone who came for the second time. That's even cooler. And we will see you guys not next week because it's Christmas, but we will be here New Year's Day if people want to have a little celebratory reading. So with that, take care. Have a good night. I'm going to stop the recording.